from the dreaded command line terminal.
Section 2. The initial trials. The installation itself actually went flawlessly, using a simple bootable USB guide, but the real test began after that first boot.
This is where our user intentionally stepped out of their comfort zone. Even though CachyOS literally provides a handy Install Ops button, they bypassed it entirely. They started by looking up basic terminal commands, learning to navigate directories, create files, and search. From there, they successfully installed Discord and Steam, but they leveled up really quickly. When they couldn't find a program called Foundry VTT in the official repository, they just figured out how to modify a .desktop file to make their system recognize the downloaded software. And for another niche program called KenkuFM, they even learned how to parse and vet packages from the Arch user repository, the AUR, out of pure curiosity. They were taking total control.
And this brilliantly illustrates one of the biggest initial hurdles for new Linux users, right? Finding software replacements. The user needed a replacement for NVIDIA's Shadowplay and ran into a codec licensing issue with DaVinci Resolve. So they swapped to free open source software, or FOSS. For recording, they used GPU Screen Recorder, and for editing, they switched over to Kdenlive utilizing the AV1 codec. And the crazy result? They actually preferred the alternatives. They described GPU Screen Recorder as a lighter, less impactful version of Shadowplay, and they found Kdenlive was just plain faster for their everyday editing needs.
Section 3. The gaming test. Now, this brings us to the ultimate multi-million-dollar question for any PC enthusiast. Our users stated upfront that they primarily use their PC for gaming, so can a first-time Linux user actually game on this setup without pulling their hair out?
20. That is the number of games the user installed over the course of the month, heavily testing the waters, and the outcome was honestly shocking to them. Almost all of these games ran flawlessly, completely out of the box. During that first week alone, they installed 6 titles and didn't have to do a single ounce of troubleshooting. Seriously? No way! They didn't even have to manually switch Proton versions, that compatibility layer that makes Windows games run on Linux. It just worked.
Of course, let's be real. It wasn't a 100% flawless utopia. There were a couple of minor hiccups. Their Hitbox fighting game controller wasn't picked up initially, but they fixed that with a super quick Google search that taught them how to restart the Xzone driver service right in the console. Later on, they experienced some screen flickering in Monster Hunter Rise. By checking the community resource ProtonDB, they found a suggestion to run Proton version 9, which worked perfectly. And because their confidence had grown so much by this point, they even went into the game's config file to manually force vsync off, completely solving the issue for good.
Section 4. 4 major Linux takeaways. So, after a full month of daily driving CachyOS, the user broke down their experience into 4 major benefits.
The first major takeaway was the sheer performance and absolute lack of bloatware. According to the user, CachyOS just runs better. It starts quicker, it shuts down quicker, and they experienced 0 stutters waiting for applications to open or close. They noted that it genuinely feels like the PC only contains exactly what is needed. It makes the entire system feel incredibly responsive compared to their previous heavier setup.
The second takeaway was a massive increase in day-to-day efficiency. The user ditched all their old Windows habits, like relying on a standard applications launcher and having a cluttered desktop full of icons. Instead, they adopted this hyper-efficient, keyboard-focused workflow, launching programs by simply typing their names into a lightning-fast, zero-bloat search function. They even went ahead and highly customized their desktop with hidden widgets, including PC Analytics, and, get this, a functional tea timer that hides seamlessly until they move their mouse to the edge of the screen. How cool is that?
Takeaway number 3 is what they call the double-edged sword of absolute control. It's that realization that you are the one in charge, and if you want something done, you can do it. The user noted that while the unrestricted power of Linux can be scary, and yeah, there are plenty of horror stories out there of people accidentally bricking their systems, they never actually felt in danger. Instead, this step-by-step troubleshooting process replaced their initial fear with immense confidence. They were learning about their operating system naturally, kind of on the side, rather than sitting down for one giant intimidating study session.
And the final takeaway really reinforces their earlier software discoveries. Free open source software is just amazing. The user found that utilities like FileLight, which is used for scanning drive space, and the GPU Screen Recorder we mentioned earlier just run better. Why? Because they are tuned specifically for their purpose with absolutely no corporate fluff attached. For everyday applications, the Linux alternatives were vastly preferred.
Section 5. The community weighs in. Naturally, publishing a glowing Linux review in a massive PC gaming forum is bound to draw some attention, right? So let's shift gears and see how the broader community reacted to this highly successful case study.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how veteran users immediately jumped in to debunk the widespread fear of Arch Linux. User R_Linder3 explained that the reputation for mandatory heavy tinkering really stems from vanilla Arch, where you basically have to build the system from scratch yourself. But with modern forks like CachyOS, all those building blocks are already put together for you out of the box. You get a seamless experience without sacrificing any of that underlying control.
Of course, the skeptics arrived too, as they always do, but the community swiftly dismantled the common anti-Linux arguments based on modern realities. When a commenter claimed Linux isn't as good with NVIDIA GPUs, the original poster calmly pointed out, hey, they used an RTX 4070 Super for a month with literally zero issues. When someone claimed the terminal is mandatory, users noted that fully functional graphical user interfaces exist, and utilizing the terminal was just a deliberate personal choice for learning. And as for the claim of bad backward compatibility, commenters highlighted that compatibility layers like Proton and Wine actually run older Windows and DOS games much better than modern Windows does today.
As the discussion deepened, a really popular sentiment emerged regarding the hidden cost of staying on Windows. One commenter noted that while learning Linux definitely takes an initial time investment, sticking with Windows ultimately costs more time in the long run. Think about it. They cited the constant daily friction of closing pop-up windows, navigating aggressive bloatware, managing those fragmented settings menus, and dealing with forced updates. Once you acclimatize to Linux, the community argues, you gain all that wasted time back.
So the crucial point is this. Our user went into this experiment fully expecting a grueling month of troubleshooting and broken games, but instead, they found a faster, cleaner, and highly customizable experience that just worked. They actually felt like they had cheated because it was so smooth. It leaves us with a pretty provocative question to chew on. Are your current computing habits holding you back from a much better experience? Are you ready to finally take control of your own PC? As the user themselves suggested, it's totally free and you can simply boot it live from a USB drive just to see for yourself.